Welcome back. Beautiful decoys, masterful actors, strategic silence operators, the ones who learned that sometimes the best way to catch a predator is to play the prey. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That moment when you stopped defending yourself, when you let them think they won, when you went quiet and small and harmless, and suddenly, they couldn't help themselves anymore. They revealed everything. Their masks slipped. Their true faces showed. Their hunger became visible. Because predators, real predators, they can't resist what they think is wounded, can they? They circle. They close in. They get comfortable. And that's exactly when you were watching, learning, recording every single move they made while they thought you were too broken to notice. You played the victim so convincingly that they forgot you were directing the entire scene. They thought your silence meant defeat, your withdrawal meant surrender, your calm meant you'd given up fighting, but you weren't giving up. Were you? You were gathering evidence. You were watching their patterns. You were learning the language of snakes. You were studying predator behavior from the inside of their trap. And now you know things about them they'll never admit to themselves. You've seen the mechanics of manipulation. You've witnessed the anatomy of betrayal. You've decoded the entire system because you let them think you were too hurt to pay attention. See, they needed you broken. They needed you small. They needed you silent and compliant and grateful for whatever scraps they threw your way. So you gave them exactly what they wanted. On the surface, you played the part perfectly. Tears on cue, apologies flowing, ego dissolved, threats neutralized. But underneath you were cold, calculated, awake. You were the scientist observing the experiment. You were the detective in disguise. You were the trap disguised as weakness, and they walked right into it because predators always underestimate their prey. They always believe their own lies about your weakness. And the beautiful, twisted, perfect irony of it all, by trying to break you, they broke themselves open. By trying to expose your vulnerabilities, they exposed their entire operating system. By trying to prove you were the problem, they revealed themselves as the plague. Every accusation was a confession. Every attack was a self-report. Every lie they told about you was the truth about them wrapped in projection. You didn't have to expose them. You just had to let them talk long enough, push hard enough, feel safe enough to show you who they really were underneath the performance. They thought they were hunting, but you were the one setting the traps. They thought they were studying you, but you were dissecting them in real time. They thought they had you cornered, but you were mapping every exit, every weakness, every pattern in their predatory dance. And now you carry knowledge that terrifies them. Now you know how they operate, what they fear, how they hunt when they're lying. And that makes you the most dangerous thing in their world. Prey that learn to think like a predator without becoming one. Let's talk about what really happened when you stopped explaining yourself, when you stopped defending your character, when you let them write whatever narrative they wanted about you while you just watched. That silence, that wasn't weakness, was it? That was warfare. Because you discovered something they never wanted you to know. Your silence makes them confess. Your absence makes them obsess. Your refusal to engage makes them unravel completely. They needed your reaction. They fed off your defense. Your explanations gave them ammunition. But when you stopped providing fuel, the fire turned inward and started consuming them instead. You watched them spiral, didn't you? Watched them tell more lies, create more drama, involve more people. All because you wouldn't play anymore. They kept poking, prodding, trying to trigger you back into the game because your silence was killing them softly. It was driving them absolutely insane that you weren't crying, weren't begging, weren't trying to prove your innocence to people who'd already made up their minds. You just existed, calm and quiet, like someone who knows something they don't. And that made them paranoid. That made them sloppy. That made them reveal more than they ever intended. See, predators need participation. They need you scared. They need you reactive. They need you defensive because that's how they maintain control. That's how they justify their attacks. That's how they convince themselves and others that you deserved what they did to you. But you stopped giving them that satisfaction. You stopped performing the role of victim they needed you to play. You stopped feeding the narrative they'd constructed. And without your participation in their story started falling apart. Plot holes everywhere. Inconsistencies stacking up. Lies, contradicting lies. And here's what they didn't calculate. While you were silent, you were listening. Listening to what they said when they thought you couldn't hear. Listening to how the story changed depending on who they told. Listening to the variations, the exaggerations, the complete fabrications. You became a student of their deception, and every contradiction they spoke, every detail that shifted, every emotion they performed, it all went into your memory like evidence in a case file. You weren't defending yourself because you were building something bigger. A complete psychological profile of how they operate. You learned that their attacks intensified when you were healing. You noticed they came back around whenever you started glowing. You saw the pattern. Every time you leveled up, they tried to drag you down. Every time you found peace, they manufactured chaos. Every time you moved forward, they weaponized your past. And none of it was random, was it? It was systematic. It was intentional. It was predatory. They needed you stuck in that victim role because your evolution was a threat to their entire identity. Your freedom exposed their cage. Your healing revealed their sickness. So let me ask you something. When did you realize you'd caught them? Was it the moment they told a lie so big it contradicted their previous lies? Was it when they attacked you for something they'd done themselves? Was it when you watched them perform the same manipulation on someone else and recognized every single move because they'd used it on you first? Was it the moment you saw them smile in your face while you knew exactly what they'd said behind your back? That moment when the mask fully cracked and you could see the machinery underneath? Because that's the moment everything changed, wasn't it? That's when you stopped being prey and became something they couldn't categorize. You weren't a victim anymore, but you weren't a predator either. You were something else entirely, a witness, a recorder, a living, breathing, walking testament to their true nature. And witnesses are far more dangerous than victims because victims can be discredited. But witnesses carry evidence. Witnesses remember details. Witnesses can reconstruct the entire crime scene from memory because they were there, taking notes while pretending to bleed. They thought your tears were weakness, but tears were just the cover story while your mind stayed sharp, clinical, documenting everything. They thought your apologies meant submission, but you were just buying time, creating space, staying safe while you gathered more information. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to say, but you were choosing when and how to speak, and more importantly, who deserved to hear your voice at all. You weren't silenced. You went silent. There's a difference, and that difference is called strategy. And oh, the things you learned while playing dead. You learned who celebrated your suffering. You learned who stayed neutral while you burned. You learned who asked how you were doing but never waited for the real answer. You learned who recycled your trauma as entertainment. You learned who kept score of your mistakes but amnesia about your growth. You learned who only called when they needed something. You learned who loved the broken version of you but resented the healed one. You learned who was there for the performance but disappeared during the actual pain. But more than that, you learned about their patterns, their tactics, their tells. You can spot a manipulator in 3 sentences now. You can feel the energy shift when someone's performing versus when someone's real. You can hear the subtle put-downs disguised as compliments. You can see the isolation tactics before they fully deploy. You can recognize the love-bombing phase because you've lived through the devaluation that follows. You can identify the flying monkeys, the enablers, the co-conspirators. You've become fluent in the language of deception because you had to, because survival demanded you learn to see clearly. Now here's where it gets really interesting, where the whole script flips and they realize, too late, that they've made a catastrophic error. But you're also not playing their game. You've exited the entire theater. You're not on their stage. You're not reading their lines. You're not following their plot. You've walked off set completely. And now they're performing to an empty audience while you're building something new somewhere. They can't reach, can't touch, can't contaminate. And it's driving them absolutely insane, isn't it? They keep trying to pull you back in, keep sending messages disguised as concern, keep creating situations where you're forced to interact, keep using mutual connections to get information about you, keep checking your pages, your posts, your presence, because they can't stand that you've moved on. They can't handle that you're thriving. They can't accept that you're at peace without them. Your happiness is their nightmare because it means they didn't break you, means their narrative was wrong, means they lost the only power they had, the power to hurt you. You see it clearly now, don't you? They need you weak because your strength reveals their emptiness. They need you doubting because your certainty exposes their fraud. They need you isolated because your connections threaten their control. They need you silent because your voice carries truth they can't spin. They need you small because your expansion reminds everyone that growth is possible, that healing is real, that people can evolve beyond their trauma, and that terrifies predators because predators rely on permanent victims. But you're not permanent anything anymore. You're fluid. You're changing. You're becoming something they never predicted because they thought they knew you, thought they had you figured out, thought they'd defined the limits of who you could be. They labeled you too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, too much, too intense. They boxed you in with diagnoses and judgments and stories about who you were. And then you just outgrew every single label they'd stuck on you. You became undefinable. You became untraceable. You became someone they can't explain to others because you don't fit their victim narrative anymore. And the most beautiful part? You didn't become a predator to beat them. You didn't have to adopt their tactics, their cruelty, their manipulation. You didn't have to become what hurt you to overcome what hurt you. You just had to see them clearly, understand them completely, and then walk away with all that knowledge, all that wisdom, all that hard-earned clarity about how predators operate. You took the lesson and left the torture chamber. You grabbed the manual on manipulation and burned the relationship. You studied the monster and then starved it by removing yourself from its feeding ground. Oh, and let's talk about what happened when the others started noticing, shall we? Because you going quiet, you healing, you thriving, it didn't just affect them, it affected everyone who was watching, waiting to see if you'd break, placing bets on how long you'd last, gossiping about your downfall. And when you didn't fall, when you rose instead, their entire worldview started glitching, because if you could escape, if you could heal, if you could become stronger after everything they watched you endure, what did that mean for them? It meant their excuses died. It meant their justifications for staying in misery collapsed. It meant they had to face the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, they were choosing to stay stuck. And they can't forgive you for that, can they? They can't forgive you for proving that survival is possible, that healing isn't a myth, that you can outlive your trauma and become something powerful. Your existence became a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. Mirrors just reflect. And what they saw reflected in your transformation was their own stagnation, their own fear, their own unwillingness to do the hard work you did in the dark. So some of them turned on you too, didn't they? Called your healing fake, called your growth performative, called your peace pretentious. They needed you to stay broken because your brokenness made them feel less alone in theirs. They needed you to stay in the cage because your freedom reminded them they were still holding their own keys. They needed you to fail because your success meant they'd have to try. And trying meant risk. Trying meant change. Trying meant admitting they'd been lying to themselves about being powerless. But here's what's wild. Even their attacks taught you something. You learned who couldn't celebrate your wins. You learned who felt threatened by your happiness. You learned who needed you small to feel big. You learned who was only your friend during your disaster era. You learned who loved the drama but hated the healing. And that information? Priceless. Absolutely priceless. Because now you know exactly who belongs in your future and who was just a character in your origin story, necessary for the plot, but not meant for the sequel. You're not bitter about it anymore, though, are you? You're not even angry. You're just clear, crystal clear. You see the game board now. You see the players. You see the patterns. You see the cycles. And you've opted out completely. You're not playing chess with them. You're not competing. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore because you've realized the truth. People who are committed to misunderstanding you will never suddenly wake up and get it. People who are invested in the lie will never admit the truth. People who need you to be the villain will never see you as the survivor. And all this time, you've been collecting, haven't you? Not for revenge. No, that's what they do. But for clarity, for proof, for those moments when you start to doubt yourself, when their lies almost sound like truth, when you question if maybe you were the problem after all. That's when you open the vault, the mental file where you've stored every receipt, screenshots of their contradictions, recordings of their lies, memories of their cruelty, evidence of their patterns, not to expose them, but to remind yourself why you left. Because they're good, aren't they? Predators are excellent at revising history. They rewrite the story until they're the victim and you're the abuser. They gaslight so effectively that sometimes you wonder if your memory is broken, if your perception is flawed, if maybe you really were too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. And that's when the evidence saves you. That's when you look at the facts, the timeline, the concrete proof of what actually happened versus the fiction they're selling, and reality snaps back into focus. You have texts where they said one thing and did another. You have witnesses who saw what they deny. You have dates that don't match their timeline. You have proof of the lies they told about you while playing victim themselves. You have documentation of the smear campaign they launched while claiming they never spoke about you. You have evidence of the triangulation, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the projection. And you don't need to share it publicly. You don't need to defend yourself to people who've already chosen to believe the lie. You just need to know it's there, solid and real, when they try to make you doubt your own sanity. Because that's their final move, isn't it? When all else fails, they try to convince you that you're crazy, that you imagined the abuse, that you're making it up, that you're bitter, that you're obsessed, that you're the one who can't move on. They flip the entire narrative until you're painted as the unstable one, the problem, the person everyone should avoid. And if you didn't have evidence, if you didn't have clarity, if you didn't have that vault of truth, you might believe them. You might internalize their projection. You might accept the role they're trying to force you into, but you know better now. You've learned that when someone's constantly calling you crazy, it's because they're doing things that would make anyone question reality. You've learned that when someone's always playing victim, it's usually because they're the predator hiding behind vulnerability. You've learned that when someone's obsessively talking about you while accusing you of being obsessed with them, it's projection in its purest form. You've learned to trust your memory, your perception, your experience, even when they're trying to rewrite all three. So let's acknowledge what you've become through all of this, shall we? Because you're not the same person who walked into that situation. You're not even a healed version of that person. You're entirely new, rebuilt from scratch, rewired completely. You died in that experience. But what came back? What came back doesn't trust easily anymore, doesn't forgive automatically, doesn't give chances freely. What came back is selective, strategic, sovereign. What came back is someone who knows the cost of access to their energy and isn't afraid to charge full price. You've developed senses you didn't have before, haven't you? You can feel manipulation before it lands. You can spot lies in real time. You can detect fake energy from across the room. You can sense when someone's testing you, studying you, trying to find your weak spots. You've become allergic to anything that isn't authentic. Small talk feels like poison. Surface-level connections feel like time theft. Fake pleasantries make your skin crawl. You've tasted depth, truth, rawness, and now anything less feels like an insult to your intelligence. They created a monster, didn't they? Not the kind that hurts people, but the kind that can't be hurt anymore. The kind that sees through everything. The kind that operates from a place of such brutal clarity that most people can't handle being around you because you reflect back all the lies they tell themselves. You don't mean to make people uncomfortable. You're not trying to be intense. You've just been to hell and back. And now you can smell smoke from a mile away. You've learned to trust your instincts over people's words, your gut over their explanations, your experience over their promises.